The Punch TV.
Nana Akufo-Addo is a slave master. He's a dirty slave master. You know who a dirty slave master is? A slave master who monstrously is bloodthirsty. He has no respect for Ghanaians. He has no respect for our heritage. He has no respect for our culture. Above all, he has no respect for the blood and toil of our ancestors. This was a man who initiated a celebration of loans that are tying us down and the generations to come with KENKEY parties. They brought a cake, my brother, my sister, to be celebrating the so-called e-levy. These were the same people who celebrated the IMF loans coming in with KENKEY parties. It looks like every time the country is saddled in debt, anytime the country makes movements towards slavery, we celebrate that with KENKEY parties and cakes. I am so ashamed of this president. Sometimes I do not know whether it is good to go to school and run away from illiteracy, or it is better to stay illiterate. Sometimes I weep for my country. Trust me. Listen, my brethren. The IMF has never helped any country economically. The IMF is a dangerous slave master that is set up to dismantle the hinges and the foundations of African economies. Like it or not, believe it or not, love it or loathe it. The IMF is not African-centered. The IMF is not something that Africans should celebrate. The IMF is a colonial organization. In fact, better still, a neo-colonialist that is ready to continue to dismantle the very economy of African nations.
The Punch TV
is by chance. Even though we have the gold and the diamond, the bauxite, the lithium, and even more, including oil, yet we don't seem to be seeing the economic light in any of these African countries. As long as the World Bank and the IMF continue to exist, African economic foundations will be degraded and dismantled. But our colonialist-minded leaders, like Nana Akufo-Addo, Bawumia, and all those people who are no good leaders, I will say this time and again, even with a gun to my head. How can you, how dare you, Mr. President? You run the whole country aground. You told us we were sitting on gold and diamond. You told us we were sitting on money, but because of bad leadership, you couldn't see the money. And when you came, you kicked us from out of the chairs that sat on the money. And we can't find no money. You can't find the money yourself. You have to go to a colonialist organization like the IMF. Knees on the ground, begging for loans. Are you not a traitor, President? Maybe I should write another song called Traitor President. My brother, I am so hurt. They said they went to the IMF, and this is Mr. President here, gratifying and glorifying the image of a neo-colonialist organization like the IMF. Anytime we discover any natural mineral resource, these are the same organizations that send their shadows and their long rubber hands into our country. They give us loans that we don't need, and then we use as collateral these natural resources that we just discovered. They come for the natural resources by making sure that we are unable to pay those loans. We should have known this several hundreds of years ago. Those of you who have not read the book that I always talk about, The Economic Hitman, Confessions of the Economic Hitman.
The Punch TV.
Find time. It is an easy to read book, and you would understand every little sentence. from a former hitman, economic hitman. When we call you a hitman, it means you are an assassin. And if you are an economic hitman, you are an economic assassin. It is not all assassins who kill people. There are assassins who kill economies. The IMF and the World Bank are such dangerous and dirty assassins. Yet our leaders are still in bed with them because they are so corrupt, because their brains do not work anymore. They are too old to think. Some of them have never even thought about Africa since they were born. All they care about is their allegiance to their slave masters. We cannot take any decision in this nation unless America is consulted, unless England is consulted, now unless China is consulted. China is a threat to American businesses in Africa. And therefore, America and China are at a cold war. And we Africans are those who suffer. After all, when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. My brother, my sister, when would our leaders have the common sense of decency, common sense of patriotism, to understand that Africa needs genuine minds of loyalty and patriotism, and not big book heads, and not grammar speaking leaders who don't mean anything for Africa? I leave it here.